My name is Kevin and welcome to my presentation on if our criminal justice system treats males and females equally. So my research will examine whether Victoria's criminal justice system treats males and females equally or if it's the other way around. We'll look at previous records, legal guidelines, and guidelines created for the cause, and decide at the end if the motive is true to its claims. Although protecting and serving human rights is among the most difficult tasks for officials and courts, this has happened since there was a crook justice device in Victoria, so judicial guidelines could have been created when such events happened. So moving on, we'll be looking at offences committed by both men and women. So the reality of the first operations with the crook justice device led to an appraisal to be conducted in the judge's court, and it was concluded that men are handled differently by the crook justice device. Historically, seriousness and cursing were important factors that affected sentencing. Regardless, even with the situation they currently find themselves in and how they ended up in the criminal justice system, their intellect can also make a real difference in their sentence. Despite the current crisis they are in, their intelligence may also contribute to the possibility of a different punishment, even if they got into the criminal justice system through an improper means. So the students observed, noticed, celebrated, obeyed 1,301 events in 3 Victorian lower courthouses to learn how different strategies and the different ways in which criminals are dealt with have long been different for males and females. Most of the time it was understood that women who were being sued or who had been sued were poorer than men who appeared in court, and that they were in need of help from others or from the state. Due to the fact they had family responsibilities, they were believed to be more of a first-year plaintiff. It is quite unlikely for women to appear alone in court accused of a violent crime, and is usually between the traces of money-based crime, because they have home duties and only have the first wrong towards popularity and private considerations. The majority of women's pleas in reducing something terrible of jail punishment or time spent in prison have been higher in all probability than men. Female lawbreakers were more likely to receive a bond than male lawbreakers, and it was also determined that they were less likely to receive a fine. Continuing on, we'll be looking at statistics comparing female and male offenders. When male and female lawbreakers are sentenced for almost similar offences, women show that female lawbreakers receive lower jail sentences than male lawbreakers. When looking at less serious offences in Victoria, 16,317 adult women were imprisoned during 2008 and 2009, only 20% of whom were convicted, compared to 64,545 adult men, which only 80% of whom were found guilty. Some studies have found skewed conceptual images in sentencing when focusing on female lawbreakers, who have been shown to be treated differently where guidelines are not rigorously enforced in comparison with men. In the course of managing and conducting the studies, the differences between the courts and criminal justice systems were taken into account. An old piece from 2015, courtesy of Sydney Crook Attorney, states that despite the fact that big girls are more likely to be on the wrong side of law, and men perform 3 times as many crimes as women, many argue that it is just unjust for women to be treated more freely than men. An instance of prejudice based solely on intercourse is fundamentally and frequently in the selection of women. Another study conducted on the site that discovered women who commit crimes had drug issues, physical and mental problems, and significant financial problems as opposed to males, which may explain why they do such activities. So furthermore, we'll be looking at some professional input. Dr. Roger Douglas used his own expertise to conduct research that confirmed his early results of lower fines for women than for males. It was essentially linked to or correlated with penalties regardless of prior charges. However, multivariate studies of being incarcerated revealed that gender had little or no influence. Glancing at regular crime, assault, property, drug and public order offences, and site visitor offences one by one, the primary factors influencing whether or not the character being sued could be held liable. Legal assistance appears to have affected the site visitor cases and was previously linked to avoiding custodial jail punishments in typical criminal cases. Looking at some statistics, females lost their license at a lower rate than males, 195% of men compared to the 113% of women who lost their licenses. So, it is easy to conclude that females have a greater advantage than males in the prison justice system through Victoria, and will continue to do so in the future, depending on the variables that are considered. As time passes and more legislation and laws are enacted, courts all over the world will continue to debate gender bias, as the legal systems face constant scrutiny that the principle, all are treated equally, is not currently being upheld. It would definitely be particularly challenging for individuals who have been the victims of gender prejudice in courts to move forward. All individuals who perform research to see if our criminal justice system treats men and women equally will come to the same results.